Paracetamol.
AKA paracetamol.
Não, é paracetamol mais. Cloro hidrato.
Moacir aí, pessoal. Boa tarde, irmãos. Vamos dar início, então, à nossa próxima palestra.
Em inglês, né?
Yes.
Just to make sure. He was checking if you were awake.
So we're going to get started with the next talk. Why is that important? What are we talking about so far? Are we talking about our perspective?
Yes.
We're talking about governance perspective. We're talking about families a little bit. We're talking about the user's perspective, the author's perspective. Yeah. Our perspective. So what do you hear from them, from the spirit? What do you hear from the other side? Like, do you know what is the impact it causes? Like, we know you can spend your life under addiction, but what happens next? What is the next step? How do they wake up? What do they feel? Which is their understanding? Do they have any understanding? So to get started, I would like to say that I base these talks in passages from the book Astro City, Nosso Lar, by Derlis, Psychographic by Francisco Xavier. Also, Memoirs of a Suicide, which describes that importantly, and we're going to discuss why suicide is related to drug utilization as well. And this book was psychographed by Ivone do Amaral Pereira, by the spirit Camilo Castelo Branco, and also a little bit of the suicide call solution that the book based also in the memoirs of the suicide that describes important different problems that we can see and is very important in suicide prevention. They are becoming up in English very soon as well. Therefore, to start, I just have a few questions. First one is, which is the impact of addiction and unconscious suicide after that? What can we learn from the example we have? So, do you guys remember any examples? Any books?
No.
Sure. I was thinking about bringing the library in and point to every book that we have. So there's a passage here, there's a passage there. Basically, there's a passage related to drug utilization, alcoholism, using of tobacco, or any other kinds of drug, pretty much all of the books inside. And we understand they don't write a word called the meaning. Imagine about whole passages, several books, several phrases, talking about the same theme. Why do you think that happens? Are you okay with that? Why do you think that happens? Because of the weight of it. It's so important. It is indeed so important. That's present in pretty much every book. It's present in pretty much every life. And when we talk about unconscious suicide in this aspect, that many of these spirits, they live a materialistic life where they believe that this life is everything. And if they die, the end is they kill the pain of the body, they kill the suffering of the body, they kill their conscience with the body. But we know that that's not what happens. If you just look in the introduction of the Astro City, they say life doesn't cease. Life is the eternal spring, and that was the shadowy game of delusions. The great river have its trajectory before the men see, talking that we do have many trajectories in our lives as well. The soul also goes through different paths and phases. Life doesn't cease. So, if life doesn't cease, question 149, the Spirit's book, what becomes of the soul at the moment of death? And if you remember the answer for this question, somebody would like to read?
It becomes again a spirit. That is to say, it returns into the world of spirits, which it had quieted for a short time.
And then the 150, does the soul, after death, preserve its individuality?
Yes, it never loses its individuality. What would the soul be if it did not preserve it?
Yes. So, addicted before. Disease. Wake up and it's still the same. Can be. No. So when we talk about these, we talk about atrocity, as I said, because, or even before that, why? Why atrocity? Who is the principal, one of the most important characters in the book? And that is, yes. But who is the Androlis that we all remember? Is these the Androlis that we all remember? Sorry. Sorry. Is this the one that is sitting there in an astral city, watching the lake and listening to music? Is this the one that's walking with his friend Iglesias and discussing about life and all those things? Like, sometimes we do think of Androlis as these guys, right?
He's now.
Now, okay. But if you go back just a little bit, Emmanuel, Francisco Xavier's guide, an introduction of this book, says a very important thing. Keep his lessons in the book of your soul. They remind us that it's not enough for man to cling to his human existence. It is necessary to know how to use that existence worthily. The steps of a Christian, whatever his religious affiliation, should move it truly towards Christ. To this end, we have great need of a spiritism and a spiritualism, but most of all, a spirituality. So when we talk about Androlis, and we talk about him sitting on the lake and talking to Eliseas and doing this, doing that, helping many others. As if you go here in the first page of the book, they talk about the 12 other books that were also channeled by him, by him through Xavier. And each one of those would come as a nurse, as a doctor, as a helper. Right? But what happened before that? Which is the Androlis that we're going to talk about now. So, many of these people, when they discriminate, lacking spirituality, they can take them by surprise. So there is an interesting passage from the Spirit's book, chapter 3, that's return from corporal to spiritual life. Death having come upon him by surprise, the Spirit was stunned by the suddenness of the change that has taken place in him. For him, death is still synonymous with destruction, annihilation, and he thinks he hears. It seems to him that he cannot be dead. And this illusion is still further strengthened by his seeing himself with a body similar in form to the one he has quitted. For he does not at first perceive its eternal nature, but supposes it to be solid and compact, like the other. And when his attention has been called to this point, he is astonished at finding that it is not all people. So, look at this. Started by his sense of the change, but he is still seen that he still believes that he has a body and all that. So imagine that if the spirit was under addiction before, had eagerness before, had needs before, afterwards when he wakes up, will he wake up there in Astro City, in the hospital, waiting for help? Or he'll be waking up like Andreas did and confuses. He talks about being lost. I was under the impression that I had lost all notion of time and space. I was convinced that I no longer belonged to the world of the living, yet I continued to inhale deep breaths of air. So he's talking about the moment when he wakes up, and he is completely lost in that sense, because he doesn't know what happened. He thought he would die, but he discriminated and so and life goes on. Life doesn't cease as that Emmanuel before. And then you see other images of him suffering there, experiencing these moments. And he says, my conscience tormented me. I would have preferred the total absence of reason or non-existence. Copious tears ran constantly down my cheeks, and only rarely I was blessed with a minutes of sleep. So you can see that the suffering goes on. And we talk about this suffering, these challenges that he was going through. Why is that important? If we talk about the law of action and consequence, the suffering would be a consequence of what he did before. So, in our perspective, like after we go through the book, do we know what he did before? When we talk about his life, that he didn't do anything, like I was closer to my family, but not that much. I would enjoy the life as was, try to get some, to enjoy the most important, like the sensualist moments of our would be associated with like heavily eating and drinking, things like that. So that have an impact in the body and soul and perispirit, as Renato talked a little bit before. And this is what he was facing the other side. That's one. What rest I had was often interrupted by as monstrous beings awoke me and mocked me, and I was obliged to go on fleeing. So he sees the other beings around him, but basically he's at the same level, isn't he? To be there. Would he be at the same stage? No. Those are more pictures of the movie. As you can see, like the images he was having there, like very heavy, very dark images. And then look what he sees. In truth, I did not believe that I was a criminal in my life. Though my philosophy of living for the immediate present had absorbed me fully. My earthly life, now transformed by death, had been no different from the life of so many others. So when you talk about drug use, wouldn't they think the same way? Alcoholism or utilization of any other drug. Many people do that, don't they? Why shouldn't I do that? No. And then he says, my life was not different or hadn't been no different from any others. So he is basically waking up and trying to think what he did wrong. He's like, I'm no criminal. I don't believe I did anything against any other people, any other person. I don't believe I did many other mistakes besides trying to live the moment. But if we look about this, we look about the description of the place. And then we jump a little bit to the memoirs of a suicide. We can see which is the description of the valley of the suicides. Somebody would like to read?
Suicides, semi-conscious, numb, but not completely out of their senses, feel painfully wounded and nullified, dispersed in their millions of physical filaments, violently stricken by their heinous act. Paradoxes roll all around them, afflicting the tenaciousness of their perceptions with tormenting pyrotechnic, wheels of confused sensations. They are lost in the void. They do not know who they are. Nevertheless, they are terrified.
Yes. It's a very complex language, thank you for that, Luis. What you can see, the description is somehow matches what Andrew Luis was describing there before. They were numb, they are whirling around, they don't know where to go, they are lost in the void. They do not know who they are. Some of them, he knew who he was, but many of them didn't know who they were as well. But you see the importance of the description. Like, why do you think the example that he gives is valid or not valid? Like, when we see something by example, it's not, it's not like let me see how, by example, we talk about our law. Renzo talked a little bit about that before. And sometimes our law describes that if you do something wrong, you go to jail, right? But we don't say if you do something wrong, if you like attack your body, use these and that, you're going to a place that's not as fun with that as you'd like it to be. But when you see somebody going to jail by doing something, we know that it's wrong. You should not do that because it's not a good thing to do, not because we have the example, right? But the example is there as well. In this sense, the example is here too. Isn't he suffering? Like, if you imagine how much suffering he went through during all these moments, and we close the book and say, fantasy. I'll keep on drinking, I'll keep on eating, keep on doing this, keep on doing that. It's just fantasy. Isn't? If we really believe in what we do and what we say, can you imagine how much effort was placed in each word present in the book? From here, from there. And if so much effort was directed towards a message, it was because this message is very important to be read and understand, to be read and understand. So here it says, "Oh, dear friends on earth, how many of you may still avoid the bitter road of sorrow by cultivating the inner fields of your heart? Light up your lamp before crossing the threshold of the shadows. Search for the truth, lest the truth find you unprepared. Sweat and toil now, lest you weep afterwards." So when we talk about these, the examples are important for them, for us, for anyone. For anyone that listens to this can take a profit out of these moments and these good examples and words. Because we know with his bad utilization of his free will, alcohol consumption, abuse of different kinds of food and substances, he ended up killing himself. Indirectly, unconscious suicide. He didn't thought, he didn't know. He should have known once he was a doctor that what he was doing would impact his body. But he numbed his conscience to keep on doing that because he wanted to live in the moment. Isn't that interesting? And then he had all the possibilities of understanding, you know, and would still do the same thing. As we close the book and do the same thing. We have
He was unaware that he was committed suicide, right? Unconscious. And that just makes me think how many of us shorten our own time here
yes.
because we damage the body that God loaned to us.
Yes. It's quite interesting, like in all our families, right? I lost my grandfather when he was 50 by not alcohol, but sugar, basically, and bad behavior in eating. So side effects of that. And you stop to think about it, what do you think that is? And then we see the same impacts as in the obesity here. And here we are, of course, focusing on drugs and abuse of drugs and addiction. But we can think about that to every kind of behavior that we have. And you can see that the accelerating, the overutilization, use, consumption can lead to bigger problems. Okay, and we are aware. We are aware. And here he is lost in trying to think about like where he was in drug use again in that area. He's trying to understand what happened to him. But then the understanding of what happened would be a very important factor at that point. But let's just, yes, this is called the understanding. It's from the memoirs of the suicide. So when we talk about memoirs of a suicide, we know that Camilo Casalba, who committed or attempted against his own life, committed suicide. He shot himself. So he knew he was a suicide. Here he says, the understanding, I understood that I had committed suicide, that I was in the grave. But that never finished. I continued to live and suffer even more. So much more than before. Superlatively, abysmally, so much more than before, my cowardly and thoughtless act. So here, you see, he says act. It's singular because he caused his death with a shot at his head. How many thoughts, how many thoughtless acts do we perform every day, thinking that there will be no consequences in the sense of sugar, fat, or tobacco, or any of other drug utilization?
Yeah,
Pretty much
overdose,
right?
Don't say pudding.
Don't say pudding.
Only in the case of diabetes and pudding.
Yes.
Yes. To each one of us, we know that the impact of sugar is quite damaging to our organism as well. But in the other side, talking about drugs and addiction here, we know how many times, once more, we not do anything. Oh yeah, I need this to cope. I need these to move on. One day, was just today, and then just one time more, and then we go on and on and on and on. How many thoughtless acts do we perform? All of us. Should that be the way? If we don't think, as my boss says about his kids, every time they say, "Oh, we didn't think," I said, "That's where we should stop. We didn't think."
Stop right there.
Exactly. We didn't think. See, that's the problem. And we talk about the importance of the time that we have. If we don't think about what we do, or we use the time the best way we should. Are we really putting value to the time we receive it? So here, that's the Luis we remember being healed at the hospital. And that's the Luis we forget as when he was in the zone, in the what would be the translation? Umbral region? Umbral region, yes. The Umbral region, and here he would be moved to the hospital. But if you see this picture over here, and we think, okay, we died, and then our soul will be alive, and then why is he in the hospital? Like, wouldn't the soul be perfect? Wouldn't God be good?
Yeah,
And then
spraying wings and flying.
Exactly. So what is he doing in the hospital? Do you remember why he's here? How many of you have read the Memoirs of a Suicide or read about the book? Did one? Okay. How many of you have read Astro City? Pretty much. So you know why he was here? Do you remember why he was here?
Because he was still damaged by the problem he had in his physical
Yes.
body.
Yes.
Also.
So basically, the problem would be where now? Where the problem would be?
Their
So,
In their spirit. Camilo Caçoba had damage in their spirit in the region of the head from here as well. So he had to undergo surgery, spiritual surgery, in the other side to repair their spirit. So we see that the impacts we cause to our body will be impacts caused to the first spirit. So what is the first spirit? Is the link which unites the spirits with material body. It is the principle of organic life, but it's not that of intellectual life, the principle of which is in the spirit. It is also the agent of all sensations of the outer life. Those sensations are localized in the earthly body by the organs which serve as their channels, right? If you all remember those pictures, if you ever read about chakras before, you know the distribution of those, and they correlate those with functions of organs. So we know, by example, that what we do can impact our perispirit and, of course, impact the organs. So if we do something, if you talk about drug use and you talk about neuron death, basically cause dementia, cause several problems of understand how do you call it? Basically, several problems of understanding communication. It impairs the person in several different ways. Now, if we cause that to the body, it causes that to the perispirit. So when the body dies, the spirit will still have sequels of what he went through. So when we read many of the books in the library that talks about spirits that are sleeping in the other side, they're not even awake, because they were in so deep level of numbness of conscience, of damage, that he would have, after death, they would still be under control, under sleep, be able to recover little by little. Isn't that impressive? And then we think that we can cause us to be in the same time situation. Should we look to what we do in the same way? Should we imagine that I drink because I need that to cope? And then what happens? Liver problems, hepatitis, you have circulatory problems, you have renal problems. Basically, you can see how much that can impair the soul. And we think we're just attacking the body, but we see how much effort was put under here for him to recover. So when we talk about the book, and we open the book, and we read that, and we see fantasy, fiction, right? Like, oh, I don't believe in that, or I believe that a certain way. Like, oh, you see what he did? You see what he caused? You see what he ended up? What happened with this? We do the same. We really think about us. If you think about what we're talking today, drug use, oh, it's fun. Is it fun? Does it make me cope with anything? Does it?
Each moment of illusory pleasure is gonna cost you a whole lot more in suffering, trying to recover from it.
Exactly. You know, it's quite interesting to think about this in this perspective. Because What are we changing? Where are you exchanging? That's the proper term. If you do good, as we discussed before, if I know what to do, if I believe that I'm doing the best for me in the sense of following divine laws, I know that I shouldn't do it and I will not do it, right? Many people may see me as square. May see me as somebody that's not into anything. May see me as a different person, not like to engage in that sense. Or why we are exchanging. If you see that many moments in our life when we choose to do the right thing will bring us to such a better position afterwards and have very few moments of pseudo happiness, euphoria that leads us to such an amazing amount of suffering. What are we exchanging? When we talk that we are too weak to the tasks that we have in front of us, and too weak to deal with any of the situations that I'm facing, and you believe that that can be true, what are we denying at the same time? We're denying justice, and we're denying that God is good. Because no challenge or obstacle will be in front of you if you didn't have the strength to overcome.
Or the support you need, that
Indeed.
sometimes we also refuse help, right?
That's true.
Sometimes we need the support to keep going, but we refuse.
Yes. So, yes. And Louise also say, you will live forever. You will live throughout the eons a life that is immortal, that will never ever be extinguished. That will never cease to project upon your conscience the irresistible impulse to go ever forward. Forward to where? Where are we going to? Right? Like every time. And it's an invitation that I will follow and I would like to indicate for, like to suggest to everyone here, listening, watching, to follow these as well. Every time you have an opportunity to do something that you believe can cause you something wrong, or basically in every action that you do, you're going to ask the question, where are we going with this? Where are we going with this? It can be for drug utilization. I say, I have the opportunity to use it right now. Where am I going with this? I have the opportunity to drink right now. Where am I going with this? I have the opportunity to go to the center, by example, and we decide to stay home, and we think, where am I going with this? Where are we going with this? And that's something that's important to use in our lives, in a daily basis. So, Louise, provide us with such wonderful moments, memories, experiences, talking about what he went through. And we know he didn't thought he was a suicide. When they described the situation for him, how long did took him to understand that he was indeed a suicide? Which was the first reaction? Do you all remember which was the first reaction?
Surprise.
Exactly. He didn't believe in that. He is suicide. That's
Shocked.
not
He was like,
suicide.
no,
Yes. So
you're wrong. You're not talking about me.
So if we all believe that we are equal and we can all undergo the same experiences, why don't I use the examples that I have from you, and I believe them so different that I don't need your examples in my life as well?
goes back to what Eric said in the morning. How much of our conscience are we willing to access,
Yes.
right? How easy is it just to go through life's motions, just automatically, mechanically, doing everything everybody does, trying to fit in, trying to be in with the crowd. But then again, like you said, where am I going with this?
Yes.
So stopping and reflecting, unlike your boss's kids or my kids who didn't think, that's what we need to do. Think, reflect, instead of just
Yes.
acting the way I've always done.
Yes. And furthermore, we must always reemphasize that God is love and give us multiple opportunities. So after what he went through, was he in eternal suffering, or was he given a beautiful opportunity to study, to prepare, to become better, and bring us so many other examples of a person that was challenged before, did several mistakes, but was able to change. We all are able to change, because when we change, we know where we're going with that as well. So to finish, Memoirs of a Suicide, that's the last page, the conclusion, is basically a motivation text saying, let your hours endure the dark shroud of delusionment, filled with anguish and loneliness. Be patient and humble, and remember that everything is temporary, that it will change with your readjustment to the sacred laws you infringed. And learn once and for all that you are immortal, and that will not be true your reckless detour of the suicide, that any person will ever find it part of true happiness. But the most important thing is over here, with your readjustment to the sacred laws you infringed. So,
It's not change with time,
no,
it's your readjustment.
exactly.
It's actually,
If you don't change, everyone will want you, it's your choice. You need to change to modify the situation you're in. And that's pretty much our talk. Yes.
Can you comment again, why was that an indirect suicide? Release?
Yes, utilization of alcohol caused an intestinal problem. Also, he describes in the book, due to overeating, utilization of bad eating habits. So when we talk about these today, and look for the society here in Canada, look to the USA as well. High consumption of drugs and fats, carbohydrates. You can see that.
What needs to be clear is that he was conscious of that, because he was a doctor. So in his conscience, he had that. Umbral is just a state of consciousness.
Yes.
So he was, let's put in quotes this, punishing himself because he didn't follow what he knew was right.
That's true.
So that's the problem. That's why we call unconscious or indirect.
Yeah.
And that this is very important to be clear, because in our society right now, it's very rare or no one can negate that they don't know that drug abuse, alcohol abuse, or any type of drug doesn't bring consequences.
Exactly.
and or tobacco. Some like when my mother was pregnant with me, my mother is a smoker in the 70s. The doctors gave her a safe amount of time she could smoke a day being pregnant. Not long ago, my sister-in-law, 13 years ago, she made sure she had a glass of beer every single week because the doctor allowed her to while she was pregnant. And
Yes. So every act against our own conscience would cause it peace or cause it trouble.
even when we talk about happiness, I'm sorry, even when you talk about happiness, what is the happiness?
It's
That
like-
euphoria, that whatever I'm taking is causing me that very brief moment, or it's exactly the peace of mind of knowing that while everybody thinks I'm square, I'm boring, or whatever, I have the peace of mind that I am not damaging my body, that I am doing the best I can to the best of my abilities.
Yes, and as Eric described well, he was there. Why was he brought there? Why was he in similar stage of the other ones? He was not in peace with his unconscious because his whole life he tried to numb his mind in the sense that I was going to do the things he knew were not good for him. And would expect nothing to happen. But when we pass the mask fall down, we can see everything.
And even in the world, he had been called
Yes.
suicide.
Yes.
And he thought, oh, they're not talking to me because I'm not a suicide.
Exactly why you're talking.
Yeah,
Yes.
why are they saying that? They're not talking to me. That's not me.
Thank you, Master.
Thank you very much.
Foi, porque muitas vezes ele não sei legal que ele chegou naquele ponto de pedir ajuda, mas porque aquela paciente dele rezava muito por ele. Daí que ele chegou a
Sinceramente, chorar copiosamente, uma do coração ainda fala. Não aquelas repetidas, mecanicamente, que não significam nada, mas uma oração sincera, lavada de
Mas tinha uma coisa que falava que daí uma das coisas que fizeram a equipe espiritual,
Os filhos da mãe também, intercessão da mãe.
right? And you can see in the Spirit book, question 204, since we have had many existences, this kinship family goes back to previous ones. It could not be otherwise. The successions of corporal lives established ties among spirits dating back to former existence. Such frequently gives rise to the affinity between you and some spirits whose you might think are strangers, right? So every single time is affinity between those that you are there, right? According to question 205, according to certain individuals, the doctrine of reincarnation appears to destroy family ties by carrying them back to previous life. Instead of destroying them, extend them, since kinship may be based on previous affections. The ties, the unit members of the same family are less precarious. Moreover, reincarnation broadens the duties of fraternity because your neighbor or your servant may be a spirit who was formerly related to you by blood, right? So that's bring a lot of responsibility, a lot of questions to reflect, right? And be, again, sure that the family we are placed on is the family that you need to have, you have to have, right? Question 207 by Allan Kardec. Parents among always transmit physical likeness to their children. Do they also transmit moral likeness? No, because their soul or spirit are different. The body proceeds from the body, but the spirits do not proceed from the spirit. There is no other link than blood kinship among descendants. But look at question 207a. Where does the moral likeness that sometimes exists between parents and children come from? They are sympathetic spirits attracted by similarities of inclination, right? So a lot of times we are connected between a wonderful laws of thought between those affinities, similarities, sympathetic experience, right? In Joana de Angelis, in the book Conflitos Existenciais, Existential Conflicts, chapter 12, Joana talked about the drug addictions. Drug addictions is a present one, the most serious problems of mental and organic health. Is the face of toxic substance that exerts a disturbing predominance on the nervous system. So we know how strong and how devastating is those drug addictions that become not just mental but organic health problem, right, in the nervous system.
You can see more. Sorry, you can see back home the crack addiction and the problem in the babies. It's just
Born, right? There's a lot of problems come, right? So we know about those addictions. So have you reflected already what is the cause of the addiction? What causes addiction? Well, if you ask to a neurologist, they will say, oh, the problems originate in the biochemical dysfunctions of the brain. Is he wrong? But then you ask to a psychiatrist, right? Psychiatrist or a psychiatrist, right? Dependence on drugs stems from depression or some anxiety disorder, right? So they go search for any addictions. Can be drugs, can be alcohol, fats, food, sugar, because of the previous depression or anxiety disorder, right? But then you ask to a psychologist. What does psychologist say? Enzo.
Drug addiction is based on an emotional conflict caused by some occurrence during the developmental stages of childhood.
They are wrong? Not really. Okay, so can be biochemical dysfunction of the brain, can be depression, anxiety, problems in the first or second childhood, right? And then you can ask to religion people, right? Or even our grandmother. The answer is so simple. It's lack of God. Tá faltando Deus, meu filho. Right? Vergonha na cara. Right? Well, here we are spirits, right? So what we would say when we see a drug, addict using a drug in the streets, as we mentioned this morning, can only be a obsession process. Só pode ser obsessão. Só pode. Or they come from other lives. I'm going to ask you, all of those are wrong, or they are all right? Almost all of them.
Partially right?
Partially right, right?
Not really wrong.
Completely wrong.
Completely wrong. Physiologically.
They are correct in the way they are seeing a picture, right? But or a piece of a picture, or a piece of a puzzle, right? But they are seeing the whole puzzle, right? Because we know that that's true. Biomedical dysfunctions of the brain help that. But we also know right now that's the same way that every single abuse that we do to our body is totally reflected in the perispirit. The opposite also happens. When I'm coming back to another life, all that impressions that I have in my perispiritual, they are truly going through my new body. So if I have biochemical dysfunctions in my brain, what is that? Not by chance or bad luck again, right? If I have depressions and anxious disorder, why does happen? So if I'm trying to use some kind of drugs, alcohol, any substance to fill a gap that I have, it's because I have a gap, right? And what should I have instead of those gaps? I can have had problems in my childhood, right? Almost everybody has some kind of trauma, right? We study in the Spiritizar that every single one of us have criança ferida, hurt child, damaged child inside us, right? In our this kid, right? So again, if we're talking here about the family rule or rule as a family member, how can we relate all those information, right, with the responsibility that we have perante or through others, to our families, to our friends, to every single one of the people related to us, right? So again, can be lacking God, for sure, because those emptiness that we try to fulfill inside us is empathy of virtues, right? And here we work so hard every single month with different virtues. So if we try and every single time try to fulfill these empathies, these virtues, try to reflect and think what I'm missing, why I'm feeling that, why my family, my parents, grandparents, my brother, my sister, my sons and daughters have those kind of depressions, feelings, desire, depression. So how can I help? How can I be by their side, try to help them, right? And as we saw before in the other lectures, for drugs, for alcohol, a very important moment of our development here in Earth goes to the adolescents, right? The teenagers, right? Because it's there where the transition between child to adult, we start to have contact, not just with the environment that are around us, but also with all the tendencies that we brought from other lives, right? Joana de Angelis again, by Valdo says, teenagers are information, and of course, they have forces that must be channeled with balance so that they do not disturb them. They need support and insight, family orientation, because they lack the experience that best teach the direction to follow in every event in your life, right? Experience. They have a lot of forces, hormones, energy, sugar, right? But they don't know how to channel, how to direct that the whole energy, right? They don't have the experience that adults already have. So that is very important again to be as a parent, friends, brothers, to be in contact with those teenagers, right? To guide them properly, right? And we are mentioning a lot of parts here of the seminars by Espiritizar Galileo from cure and for tabagism, alcohol, and drugs. He will be doing the next presentation for us. So it's a very good material that you guys, I suggest you go and watch. He will be talking with us in maybe 1 hour. And then we have a lot of materials online to read. So a lot of beautiful things to watch, right? I also use some parts, my research from this book, Filhos da Dor. Very beautiful as well, with a lot of real cases, like relatos. Very beautiful also. And every single one of those cases here, and also as Alirio mentioned, the best way to help, or much, much easier than try to rehabilitate, is prevent, right? And there's no better way to do that by talking, to be near your children, near the persons that may be going through the whole process like this. So what is the parent role? So in this, by Espiritizar, in those seminars, and we talk also about families, they say that the parent has some functions, and that will depend of the age of their children, right? So from 0 to 7, it's very important to have a directive function. So you will have channel, direct the intention, right? So children on those ages, they don't have discernment still. So they can be using their free will correctly. So it's responsibility for the parents to direct them, right? After 7, they and then before that, so that's why it's very important in those direction. Not just the parents do the decisions, but also how those children understand the environment around them. And that's why the example is the most important part on those. So you cannot talk as you talk to an adult. You cannot argument, you cannot explain, you cannot go logically, but you can show your examples. So going back again, what you said about drugs, marijuana, tobacco, and alcohol, the example is the most important in this part of their lives, right? And a little mentioned, so how can we be talking to our children or saying that it's bad for them to smoke, to use drugs, even alcohol, if we are doing that with a glass in our hands, right? Or if we teach them that the happiness, that's not happiness, it's just euphoria. Those look like happiness is coming from their first birthday party, second birthday party, and all the family is there together and drinking, right? So they can associate that very, very easy, right? Then the second stage from 7 to 13, the children is finishing the reincarnation process. So they are really now able to exercise their free will. But will us as parents let them make their choice? No. We still have to guide them, right? So we still will be directing, but also guiding them. Okay, so they're giving them a direction. A little bit later, when they are the teenager, we will still are directing, but before that, or first, we are guiding them. Right? So change a little bit, because they have to exercise a little bit more their free will. And us as parents, as godfathers, brothers
and
and
they still don't
friends.
have enough discernment. Whenever we see they're going the wrong direction, we go back to the director.
Yeah. So we still have to give the examples, right? But now we have to be even more connected to them. We have to establish a relationship, communication in two ways that you can give them, assure them that you are listening to them, that you are helping them, and you are there to talk about anything, right? After the kids are adults, right? Can we direct them? Yeah, some parents do.
They
try.
They try to interfere.
Can we guide the line? They try.
They do.
But what they always should do is suggest, right? And Alino said also, actually he started by this last one, collaborative functions. That is for the whole life, or even later, right? We see a lot of mothers already disincarnated in the other side, is still praying, is still taking care of their children here in Earth, going through a lot of those sad process, right? So parents are forever, right? If you have some cases in your families with alcohol abuse, drugs, I can have a partner that have those problems. We try our best to be by their side forever, but sometimes life makes us go apart, right? So it's normal. We have ex-wife, ex-husband, but there are ex-mothers,
You shouldn't.
ex-fathers,
You shouldn't.
there shouldn't, right? No ex-parents. Even if a parent decides to go to this way, they still will be very responsible for their children, right? So again, can we do the hard work for them? No. We cannot elaborate for them, but you can collaborate to them, right? So we have to be always by their side. Talk to them, be open, be guide, right? Directive, suggestive, collaborative with our children.
Just to add, this is all explained in a lot of detail for Portuguese speakers in the book Saúde das Relações Familiares. I recommend it to everybody.
It really can help understand, not just as parents, right? But also as children or as sons, right?
Yeah, and as
Brothers.
a spiritist parent, not to assume a materialistic behavior, not to assume a materialistic way of raising our kids. So how do we raise our kids as just parents?
Yeah.
So what's expected behavior for all those ages? What should a spiritist parent consider a normal behavior for teenagers? And it's an amazing guide. It helps so much.
Yeah. To understand them as immortal spirits, right? That's the difference. Joana de Angelis, in the book Depois da Tempestade, After the Storm, gives us this beautiful message. Can you?
Moral education in the light of the gospel without disguise or distortions. Spiritual awareness without floating. Freedom and guidance based on responsibility. The moral disciplines from an early age. The caring vigilance of cautious parents and teachers. Social and medical care and fraternal contribution are effective antidotes to the apparent problem of toxic self-flagellation that humanity is suffering from having exchanged the values of love and truth for irrelevant behaviors as foolishness of frivolity.
We have enough information here for at least 2 hours talk, right? So if you go every single one of those, is a deep, deep message, right? So again, in our family, what is our role? Moral education in the light of the gospel, without disguise or distortion, right? So no, do what I'm saying, don't do what I'm doing, right? Spiritual awareness without floating.
Yeah, it's what Eric said about like showing them the door, and then without flaunting. For Portuguese speakers, in Portuguese is sem alarde. So we go back to like parents who force their kids to go to church and blame everything on, you're lacking God, and make such a big deal out of it that like I have a whole lot of friends whose parents were so hardcore religious with rituals, and the kids had to follow the rituals, then their kids ended up going the exact opposite way, not wanting anything to do with religion.
Freedom and guidance based on responsibility, right? So very, very complex, right? How to manage and balance those freedom and guidance. But when we base on responsibility, that helps us give you a very good way to do that, right? Moral discipline from early age. So, okay, so in the example, right? So 1 year old, 2 years old, okay, they have no understanding that we are drinking, that we are doing this, that. Yes, they do. They understand a lot.
Sponges.
Right? So those moral examples and discipline from early age. In the computer. Maybe I'll leave you for no? Okay. All right. Second part. Renata, can you help us?
Sure. Still the book after the storm. Fathers or mothers, do not think your home will be spared. Observe the behavior of the children. Stay alert. Take care of them before interfering and compromising in the narcotic and hallucinogenic flashes, at which time you can help them and preserve them.
Not my home, right? Yeah. And then that can be the neighborhood. You see how they treat their kids? Maybe we will have drugs there, but not my home. And then the neighbors are thinking the same thing. And what happened? The drugs in both homes. Okay? So be alert, be present, be parent, right? And support them. If, however, you are surprised by the drama that has entered the home, do not flee from it, trying to ignore its conveyance of Victor. Do not rebel, assuming a hostile attitude. That is very important, right? Because a lot of parents, they drink, right? They do a lot of things that should be normal, but they get really upset when they realize that the kids are taking drugs. Why are you doing that? And because it's something illegal. So maybe it's the afraid to be related with something illegal, right? But or are they really, really concerned about their child, right? But why they start to do that, right? How can I help them? How can I support them, right? So don't rebel, don't flee. Help them, support them, be by their side, right? Talk, enlighten and assist those who have become victims, seeking the competent resource of medicine as well as the spirit doctrine, in order to achieve the re-education and happiness of those who the divine laws have entrusted to you and for your and their happiness. Right? So again, remember the first questions that we heard, we saw there, 2005, 2007, and they talk about those laws right? That bring us together, right? And those responsibilities that we have in our lives. And sometimes you think, okay, but I don't do drugs, I never did it, anything like that, and then my children are doing that. Am I responsible? Okay, you may in this life have already overcome those issues, but maybe, just maybe, one of the friends in other life that helped them to become addicted. We don't know, right? So if God brings us those opportunities, it's not bad luck. It's not by chance, right? And it is, again, a great opportunity, as Eric mentioned this morning, to find the virtues that was missing in the first place. On them, are ours or everybody, right? My dear friends, we may not be able sometimes to go back in time and change a parent or a grandparent with alcoholic abuse. We cannot heal brother with drugs problems. But what we can always do, prevention. We can always use those experiences to others, to help our children, godchildren, friends, to understand how important and good is life with true and real happiness. With no alcohol, no drugs, no addictions. Every single of us can be this hand here, embracing and taking care of others. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have questions or have something to add?
Ótimo.
Thank you guys.
We can always pray as well.
That was great.